Alright friends, now we have some tech stuff coming up, and put your hands together and welcome our next very prominent speaker, very prolific, and I'm a big fan of what he is going to present, which is all about data platform, big data, AI, NoSQL, and you're going to see a lot of stuff in action. Put your hands together for Mr. Narendra Bhandari, General Manager, Developer Experience, Microsoft. Welcome. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Thought I would form with me. Thank you. All right. Start with get the video playing, please. All right, we'll play the video, we'll get to it. So, good morning. The Minister laid out some very interesting challenges to us, right? He clearly talked about innovation, talked about R&D. Let's ponder on that for a few seconds, right? Clearly, we are in a stage in the industry where data is disrupting pretty much all thought process, right? Looks like the video is coming up. So we'll watch the video now.
Smart Systems Connected Drone adds intelligence and mobility to big data analysis, and it's a game changer. The current methods of power line inspections are slow, expensive, and dangerous. Connected Drone is replacing manual processes with Azure-powered machine intelligence. Drones are sent out on beyond line-of-sight missions. Data is collected using multiple sensors and streamed to Azure. Vast amounts of data is sent through power-line optimized deep learning algorithms. Connected Drone updates component registries and pinpoints faults and weaknesses in this vital infrastructure. Connected Drone is feeling the pulse of the power grid and keeps the power flowing.
What you saw in the picture, in the video, was an example of a couple of things happening together. One is just data gathering at a pace and at a scale at which human cognition and human understanding is going to become more and more difficult, and a lot of technologies need to come in to take advantage of what is bringing back. But let's dive very quickly into what is sort of causing this evolution. We talked about research, we talked about innovation. I think we are at the cusp of an industry transition where a couple of things are really coming together. Data. Let's talk very quickly about data. I think the minister very eloquently talked about how different forms, different ways, personal data, industrial data, machine data, worker data is getting generated. I've always joked for many years that data is like a banana or a fish. You bring it home, depending on you're a vegetarian or not, it has a shelf life, right? After a certain point, the data becomes unusable or begins to rot. But if managed correctly, the data is a significant asset. Most of the discussion today is about how do we manage that data. What happened sort of in the Industrial Revolution was, if you think about it, they took processes which were manual, right? We were building bicycles in small garage shops, we were building machines in small places, and then you brought scale to it, right? Where your picture on the left, if you see in the far right, you're seeing airplanes getting built at mass scale, right? I mean, in the picture you can see about 40 or 50, maybe more small airplanes getting built, mostly military aircraft, built at scale. That was unprecedented even at that time. Airplanes were considered very high-end technology, needed to be built with extreme precision care, etc. the technology was brought down to the extent that it could go into mass production. Today, analysis is done by a few people. There's a lot of data, experts sit down and you do analysis. That is going to move into more and more mass production, right, of how that analysis can be automated. And we'll talk today mostly about tools and technologies and repositories of how that data can be taken into intelligence and into action, and how we could improve your productivity and, more importantly, the organization you work for and your customers' productivity. So let's talk about that a little bit. The objective in this conversation really is empowering everybody here, the devices, the humans, the organizations, to be able to do more, right? Which kind of goes back to Microsoft core mission, which is how do we get every aspect of that ecosystem to be able to be more productive and to be able to do more. Now, the confluence, right, of these three things becomes extremely critical, because one is dependent on the other. Data being the source, cloud being, the massive hyper-secure scale which it provides, and of course the intelligence we derive into it. Let's dive into each of this, and if you kind of look at it, in a mathematical model and for some of the, space-time buffs, this is almost like a singularity, which is sort of coming together. And the singularity has these dimensions, and you've got to look at the singularity with all these dimensions and see the impact on each other. Let's dive into very quickly the data. If we look at the elements of data today, at least from a product mindset perspective, you see a variety of data platforms, and then we'll talk about some of the new platforms. So you start thinking of, where is my data? How am I storing it? What can I do with it? What are the limitations, etc. Then we start thinking of, okay, what do I do with it, right? Apply cognition to it, apply analysis to it, and we'll talk a little bit about this. And then, how does the cloud power help you scale, grow without inhibitions, without any constraints or borders, and more importantly, bring it closer to your customer? So let's dive into the database itself, right? I grew up writing, SQL queries, at least from a college days perspective. Actually, in college, PostgreSQL, it was, earlier it was called Postgres. Started doing a lot of Postgres code. And we wrote code, we had a repository, we pulled in information and, generated results, generated numbers, generated, text was extremely complex in those days, but mostly processed numbers. Today, when we look at the intelligent database, what we think of is that you have the blue portion, which is your data, right? Let's say it's demographic data of 100 people in this room. And then what we did was, we started to write code and said, okay, can I sort through age? Can I sort through the other demographics? And then started to extract intelligence out of it, right? So mind the colors very carefully, right? Blue portion is the data, and the yellow and the orange starts to become your application, the yellow being the code, and then the orange is the intelligence you derive out of it, right? There is a transformation going on, right? And something you've got to be mindful in terms of your personal careers and your skill sets, and you'll see the product's emancipation of this, which is that intelligence portion is getting closer and closer to the data. And in fact, it becomes focused on that as you start populating the data, there are rules and engines which will create the intelligence for you. Now, you are focused on writing the code for what the application needs. So simple example, my boss comes in and says, of the 100 people, give me an analysis of who is in this category, then I'll start writing code. And rely on some of the intelligence rather than going into individual queries of doing if age greater than 36 and less than 48, and if the demo, gender is so much, and if the address is so much. A lot of that intelligence starts to move into the database, right? And you worry about the higher value. Right? This you will see coming out in different ways, impacting. And as we look at the data stores in different parts of our organization, you'll see this impacting in many ways. The commercial version of this, we're very proud to say the first commercial version of this is come out in SQL Server 2017, where you've got stored procedures in languages which you guys are familiar with, in industry standard languages, which is being used to operate with data. This also has the capability to analyze graph data, right? Mathematically, scientists and engineers look at this data and say graph data, but from a human perspective, this is relationship data, right? What do I do? How do I connect with? What is my social behavior? What is my work behavior? That's the graph aspect of it, right? And more of our information is networked. This is available to you on your traditional platforms which you're used to, Windows, available to you from a Linux perspective, and Linux containers on Docker, right? All options, all flexibility exists for you guys to take advantage of it, right? Commercially available, ready to go. The benefit from this is also that this is not just constrained to where you are or in your infrastructure or your capability. You get global scale. Right? As you move to the Azure SQL database, you'll start to see that you can cut across regions, you can cut across geographies, you can cut across capabilities in terms of where your customer are, and of course, all elements of security and failover, etc. Right? That's the other benefit you get. So a lot of people come back and say, well, I've got stuff in different parts of the world. How am I going to be able to manage that? This gives you significant flexibility. Now, to get to these things, right, we need to help you, right? We need to help you to make sure that you are able to take what you have today in places where you have them and very quickly, move it to a global scale. One of the common conversations we run into is, what the vision you guys are outlining is fantastic, but I've got work to do. I've got customers in place. I've got operations in place. I really don't have time to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't have the tools to do this. We can help you with that. There are migration services now in preview which can take the information you have, take the data you have. We have sessions, and I think Ajay is somewhere in the audience. He's going to talk a little bit more about this later in the day. Take advantage of this so that you can get a lot more productive with this and move to the cloud, benefit from that, and then start applying analysis. Right? Remember, we start with the premise that you have the data. How do you start building analysis and intelligence from this? This will help you get started. Effectively accelerating your journey to the cloud and analytics. The other thing which I'm kind of cool, really jazzed about is how do we start using more capabilities from a PaaS perspective, right? A lot of your migration and manageability is taken out from your headache and will help you provide managed instances so that you're focused again on the application code. Start thinking from that picture where you focus on the yellow portion, right? The intelligence, the database, the cloud scalability, the manageability, all that is more and more now getting taken care of by you with various offerings. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving and talk about something very exciting today. Right? This is something that's going to be available starting in India today, right? Now, let's talk about this. How many of you write code in either MySQL or PostgreSQL? Raise your hands higher, 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 higher. About 20-30% of this, right? Now, how many of you use the community edition of it versus the enterprise edition? Looks like most of you use the community edition, maybe a few, right? The community edition of these databases available in India today, right? This is getting kicked off today. Now, the benefit is, with the community edition, you not only get all the updates, but you've got all the cloud stability, you've got all the cloud security, and the scalability. We've got 3 regions in India, functioning live customers today. 3 Azure regions in India, up and running for you, and these will be enabled. Excuse me. These will be enabled for you today. There are sessions. Come by and have a look. And with the languages and the tools and the capabilities you're using today, live for you to get going. Exciting? Yeah? Okay. Few people are awake. If I look at the overall picture, we talked about MySQL, we talked about the PostgreSQL. All this at the top, regardless of your capability, regardless of your skill set, regardless of what your organization is deploying, pick the vertical, you get the benefits of the cloud all the way in terms of availability, scalability, security, demand. All these come to you from making sure that your data instances have moved to the cloud. Your data estate expands to the cloud. Start thinking along those lines. If nothing else, the simple message you want to remember here is that a lot of this stuff in the bottom, in the light bluish, I want to kind of specify what needs to be done, but really don't want to get involved in managing that on a day-to-day basis. And somebody else focus on it, and somebody else take care of it. So I can work on the logic, I can work on the analysis, and my organization can really benefit. I would strongly encourage that. I'll keep saying that over and over again. Think along those lines. Get this management stuff down. Use the cloud, use the scalability, focus on the logic and the platform. Now, data has changed. Right? Data, the nature of data has changed. I mentioned I started writing code in Postgres, as it was called a long time ago. It was very structured. There were classes and structured data. Right? Every data had to have a relationship. Right? The premise in those days of data was that we knew the relationship most likely between those elements of data, or we started building the database with relationship in our minds. Today, all the elements of how data is getting generated, we've seen that data comes in different forms. Sometimes, and many a times, you don't even know the relationship between the constituents and the elements of data coming into you. Now, to address those kinds of scenarios, Microsoft launched something, Cosmos DB, earlier in the year. This is the completely built, grounds-up database designed for that kind of scenarios, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about. It's worldwide availability, completely elastic scale out, supports almost all the elements of tools, the top gremlins, Mongo, SQL, many more elements coming through. Let's hear about this from one of the top experts in the industry. I don't know how many of you know Leslie Lampert. Leslie Lampert, few names, few hands coming up. At least when I was growing up, pretty significant researcher in those days, effectively focused on starting to build with the LaTeX tool, and then build many computational science algorithms. Let's hear from him.
Cosmos DB is a database system in which the data can be replicated and copies distributed throughout the world. This permits an application to be configured so every user is near a copy of the data without the application programmer having to worry about how many copies there are or where they're located. The Cosmos DB team credits TLA Plus with helping them provide great SLAs to our customers. The work of other researchers at Microsoft Research and elsewhere was crucial to developing the 5 different consistency models that Cosmos DB allows developers to choose from. I believe that today, commercially available databases offer only 2 choices: perfect consistency, sometimes called strong consistency, and eventual consistency. Cosmos DB provides 3 additional intermediate choices. I expect that developers will use this flexibility to obtain the trade-off between consistency and performance that they find best for their applications.
In most database classes, when you would write code or structure or design the schemas and build the database, consistency became almost the #1 design principle in the past. Today, with the nature of the data and the rate at which the data changes, and sometimes that when you're doing consumer analysis, maybe that consistency can have varying degrees of flexibility. And that's what Dr. Lampert talked about, which is you've got 5 levels of consistency which you can update data. Am I updating the information? Can I run a Power BI tool in parallel to run some reports? Sure, I can. How can I do that? Do I have to have complete consistency when we do that? There are several elements of consistencies which are coming up. So take advantage of the Cosmos DB and absolutely brand new capability, completely designed for sort of very modern data environment coming from different sources. Now, we talked about migration a little bit, right, in terms of helping you move to the cloud. Now, there's a significant amount of organizations and customer interest to say, well, I love the migration, but can we stage it, right? Can I do a hybrid model? can I start and have my capability? I'll move to the cloud, but I still want to have, until I get my customers' comfort completely, my government's comfort, my data sovereignty issues, my data residency issues all taken care of, can we go with a hybrid approach? Absolutely, right? With Azure Stack and a whole bunch of other hybrid cloud offerings, now we've got not just a migration service, but we can allow you to maintain instances across. We can allow you extensibility across various platforms. I mean, you can have Cosmos DB, let's assume you have MongoDB sitting, you can ingest data, you can egress data from different databases, and of course there are several business model innovations to allow you to have a hybrid scenarios. So completely respect the customer choice in trying to say, well, we'd like to move completely to the cloud, but we're going to start maybe with a staged approach. There are capabilities and business scenarios to help you maintain a hybrid cloud offering. So message here for you guys, if your customers are having concerns about moving completely to the cloud, there are mechanisms of not only helping them move, but also helping them move in stages and have potentially a hybrid scenario. So let's talk about how some of these scenarios have helped customers right here in India, right? BPCL, most of us get gas cylinders delivered at home. I'm going to quickly rush to these. You've got the scenario where they have this capability that while the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gas cylinders are being delivered and the transactions are happening online, how does the information stay in sync and always on both sides? They took advantage of our capability. They deployed always on, and now, I don't know how many of you they use the apps on your phone to order gas, etc. You're able to not only do that from a customer perspective, they're able to be in significant sync in terms of what was delivered, what the stock is, and where they are, right? Great company, and this is only going to scale for them. Cognizant, right? Large, services and consultancy organization, doesn't need much of introduction. Significant capability for them to move data from their core data center to the disaster recovery center, right? Large chunks of data. Created, many mechanisms with managing the data estate, put the tools in place so that the downtime, quote unquote, in terms of while the DC was getting, copied into the DR center is not only minimized, but all the productivity loss is almost sort of minimal from a customer perspective. HDFC Bank, great story, local, almost, available branches across the country. They effectively put their CRM system in front of you, right? Most of you use your phone, your PC to run into the HDFC app. Now, what happened here is the CRM system initially was designed to work standalone and, do customer management. Today, the CRM system becomes the front end, and this is actually at the back end using, the core banking. So all the tens of thousands of employees of HDFC Bank are now focused on making sure that they're working on the CRM system. Not only did the response time improve, but the throughput also significantly improved, right? Because many of us today, how many of you have been to a bank in the last 1 month? Right? We don't. We typically, use some device to effectively get to our bank. What's your perception of the bank? Right? Your perception of the bank is, of course, the services they offer, but the response times and the quality which you see. That's the customer interface today, right? So it's super critical of how the CRM system behaves and how you form perceptions of the bank through that mechanism and using their capability. Our patience to go into a branch and to do something, or even the need to go to a branch, is almost reduced by 90-95%, unless you need something, a big paper signature or something like that. Let's quickly talk about what happens when we have lots and lots of data building up, right? We start to form, we call lakes or oceans of data. How do we manage that? How do we look at that, right? And then more importantly, as we build these petabytes of data, how do we evolve intelligence from this? Now, what is important to understand in this is, again, like you mentioned, that data is coming from very different type of sources, different set of apps, and also in different forms. Some of it is streamed, some of it is bursts, some of it is very structured, some of it is completely textual, some of it is images, right? And you've got to be able to sort of put these things together, run it through various mechanisms, and all all these are capabilities available to you today which match the nature of the data coming in and start to put this in some form of a lake for you, SQL data warehouse. Most important thing here is, as you bring this data in, you've got not only tools to analyze and form opinions and present reports. This is available to you at cloud scale, right? And economies of cost, which are significantly lower than pretty much anything you'll see in the market today. So as you start thinking about data, I'm sure many of you are working at elements of this and extracting this, forming this, and potentially creating reports out of it. Start thinking of this scenario where it's a larger pool and analysis can be formed, and you don't worry about scale, right? The elasticity of this is pretty much infinite from where you need to be or your customers need to be.
The extra convenience of having pause and resume and the easy scale up, scale down, that right there is just a pretty big chunk of savings.
SQL Data Warehouse allowed us to switch over to a large distributed database without changing much of our code. We immediately were able to start to use Visual Studio and Management Studio to interact with these databases.
Had we had Lotus here several years before, we probably could have saved upwards of $50 to $150 million.
Data does not become decision-making without intelligence in the middle, and that's where really Azure and IA put themselves together.
Saving millions of dollars, data, decision-making, moving things faster are all elements of our focus in making sure that you and your organizations are productive. Let's quickly jump into, again, scenarios where we've seen work with real-life customers. Infosys needs no introduction. Had a significant amount of data sitting in earlier instances of SQL, right? Now, as I mentioned earlier, typical conversation, this is great, we want to do analysis, we want to do this stuff, how long will it take, right? Typically, projects last 6, 9, 12 months, done in 3 months flat, right? Migrated to the absolute latest versions at that time, and with all the benefits of analysis and capabilities available for them. This allows you, you could argue this is almost table stakes to start doing intelligent cloud, right? If you're stuck with old forms of data or earlier versions, you probably won't be able to use, a good 50-70% of the capabilities which we are talking about in terms of intelligent cloud. So this was done very quickly, and with all the modern tools now enabled so that they can go off and done. 3 months, right? Keep that in your head. Can be done. Here's a real life example, right? With a name brand all of you recognize. Marico, right? Company again, you may not know the name Marico, but you probably recognize a lot of the brands of the products you consume from, right? FMCG space. FMCG is a very complex market. Low margin, high amount of transitions, cannot afford downtimes, sometimes low-tech environments which run across the country in different scenarios. Same scenario, very quickly moved, project completed on time, you've got quotes from the folks there, and at an extremely short turnaround. Now, in an FMCG space, the rate at which they generate data, they are ready to go do analysis and make very strong intelligent decisions. Right? UST Global, right? Again, not only did they move in terms of the latest instance, but then also the BI portion was up and running for them so that they could make significant decisions and get reports out to their customers through the BI capability, again at an extremely short instance. We could go on. Several capabilities, several instances exist, several of these stories which I've shown you here are available for you, for deep dive. Message is, you can get to these capabilities very quickly, you can get to these new tools very quickly, and this is almost base case for you to get to all the analysis and moving forward. Now, we talked about two axes of this. We talked about the database, we talked about the lakes. We start to look at intelligence, right? Now that you know the tools and capabilities of how to bring your data in place, we talked a little bit about how to structure it, how to bring it to the modern versions, how to start potentially doing the analysis. How does intelligence sort of play in, right? We break down, many of these cognitive functions into simple things, right? So what are we doing with cognition? What are we doing with intelligence? You need to be able to analyze data. I talked a lot about the orange portion, the yellow portion. Now, face analysis or image tagging or emotion analysis, right? There's this very famous cartoon script where the husband walks in at home and his favorite device at home reads out saying, hey, by the way, roses are on discount, right? And the guy says, why do I need roses on discount? Saying, based on the conversation you were having with your wife in the car and the tone of which I recommend you might need to order roses, and those roses can be delivered at home before your wife gets home. Okay, I could potentially use that tool, right? Serious amount of emotion analysis is going on in that conversation. Serious amount of graphing is going on in that conversation. A serious amount of speech recognition, of course, is going on in the conversation, right? And of course, connecting to commerce, connecting to whether my wife likes red roses or some other forms, or God forbid she's got allergies with roses, then it's only going to go further south, right? But I'm sort of making a joke out of this, but these are real life scenarios which we've seen implemented in governments and hospitals and other places where these capabilities actually improve the productivity of organizations and individuals. Let's look at a few examples of how this things. Graphing is becoming extremely important, right? This notion of big cognition comes up. Yes, I detected a voice that I want to order Italian food in Narendra, but that's speech recognition. Great. How does that link to, well, you order Italian food in Narendra from this place, but I noticed that your allergies to a certain type of, or sugar wants gluten-free pizza, right? Can I recommend a place where I can get you gluten-free pizza, right? That starts to bring elements of cognition which graphs different capabilities, which analyzes who you are, what you do, what your behavior is, what your capabilities, what your aspirations are, and starts to do much more cognition, right? Think along those graph aspects of what data do you have and what cognition you could potentially derive. Let's look at some examples of how elements of each of these are put together and can be implemented in sort of real life. Let's watch this video and we'll talk about it.
We come to work every day to pilot, test, and launch new technology solutions. Realtime ID Check is the latest technology example where we at Uber are constantly developing and testing new solutions to predict, prevent, and reduce security risks in ways that weren't possible before. It's through this partnership with Microsoft that we've been able to develop this technology quickly and ensure that every rider and every driver has an excellent experience. Real-time ID Check is a prompt that appears in the driver's app asking them to take a self-photo. We can do a check in real time to make sure that that identity of the person who took the picture matches the account holder who's been approved to drive. Doing that serves a couple of purposes. Drivers know that their identities and their accounts are being protected, and riders know that the driver who they're with has been screened.
Jen? Yeah.
Real-time ID is a smart technology. What that means is it factors in and addresses the edge cases. The situation where the driver is wearing glasses or a hat and they weren't in the identification that we have on file. The beautiful thing is it can recognize these changes and ask the driver to remove their sunglasses or retake the photo. The partnership with Microsoft Cognitive Services allowed us to go from idea to execution to implementation across the country in a matter of months. Already we've been able to make thousands of rides safer, and very soon we're going to be making millions of rides safer through this technology.
The couple of things I want to quickly take away from that video is, of course, the technological aspects of facial recognition in different environments, pattern matching, name matching, all that stuff. More importantly, up and running in less than a few months at massive scale. Second point is, start thinking of scenarios in your customer situations of how these simplistic, let's say, pattern matching imaging technologies can actually make your customer scenarios a lot better. right? Though that's the sort of objective of trying to show some of these videos and reiterate the technological aspects is, what could you take from this into your customer scenarios, right? The third element, we had this conversation with somebody and said, well, this was done in India. I wouldn't worry about facial recognition. I would just put, an Aadhaar sensor there and I'll be fine. Yes, we could do it here. But how many of you, while sitting in the car, actually look at the face of the driver, look at the image, it's like, yeah, I think that guy looks like Suresh. Maybe not, right? It's a little hard, right? And the image is strong. This allows you to give that comfort. And the other important point in this video is it's not just about the passenger, it's about the driver, right? It's extremely important from a driver perspective and his or her livelihood perspective that their identity and or car is not being stolen, right, and being used somewhere else. 2-3 days ago, there was an instance of a Ola cab, I think, being stolen, and somebody did all kinds of bad stuff with it and eventually, dumped the car. Now, the driver's identity in the car became compromised, right? So it's very important, not just from a passenger perspective, but also from a driver perspective, right? Think along those lines. Let's watch one more and then we'll close.
I think in the back of each of our minds we were planning a little funeral and just didn't know where it would go after he was born.
We'd hear a song on the radio and we'd be like, maybe that's when we'd like at his funeral.
Winston was diagnosed with HLHS, which is hypoplastic left heart syndrome.
1 in 100 to about 125 babies are born with heart disease every year. And out of those, about 1% are born with half a heart. Out of all the heart surgery we do, this is the most high risk.
They lose about 25% of these babies in between the two surgeries.
The standard of care at the time was to send these families home with a weighing scale and a pulse oximeter and a 3-ring binder, and they were asked to record measurements of their baby every day.
So we needed a method that we could actually send something home with the parents so that we could better monitor and be alerted if there were conditions that we were concerned about with the patient. We have a Microsoft Surface that we load our software on. We call it Champ. We decided we wanted to use a modern app with Windows 10 as the operating system.
We would log all of his vitals, and that app became this seamless piece to his care.
With the daily reports that come in from the Azure cloud, if anything is an outlier that needs to be notified to us immediately, it'll alert us.
One night, we're debating, do we call, do we not call, but we logged it in.
When we were looking at his information, he had a couple days of not gaining weight, he was breathing a little bit harder, and he just wasn't happy on his video.
You could pull up from when he was doing fine and say, okay, a couple weeks ago, this is what he looked like. Now he looks like this. We think it is part of his aorta.
We were scared. It was real fast.
They did the procedure the next day, and then I think he went home the day after.
This technology literally saved his life.
The first time that I heard a child's life had been saved with Champ, I left the room because I kind of needed to tear up in private, because it was a dream that I'd had for a long time.
The goal is to get this out to as many patients as possible so that we can help save kids' lives throughout the world eventually.
For everyone behind the scenes, I'm very thankful for it. Saved his life, and how do you say thank you for that?
Ultimate use of technology, right? If you can build apps and capabilities which can even get closer to that, right? Not just from a human aspect perspective, but also, the business benefits, you're getting there, right? I don't even want to go into all the elements of cognition and connection and graphs. See this amount of technology at the back end of this. But again, the objective is, really to be able to say, ultimately, this was done by a bunch of geeks and developers, right? Of course, there's a huge amount of doctor, analysis involved, but that tech capability was built by probably some of you guys, right? Now, the question is, you want to ask, how can I build those kinds of intelligent apps, right? Our job is to provide you with the tools and the capabilities, and we touched upon this, and through the rest of the day and tomorrow, there's at least about 15 or 17 of my colleagues who will tell you a lot more about these capabilities, right? You can make your apps intelligent, right? You can make your apps globally available, right? The tools exist today. It is an opportunity. We talked about reskilling this morning, right? It is an opportunity for every dev in the room, for every professional in the room to start to think, am I taking advantage of it? Am I going to be part of this sort of new revolution? And oh, by the way, yes, you can save lives and make the world safer. Thank you very much.